The rain pounded against the windows of Meridian Tower like an army of impatient drummers. But to Maya Collins, it wasn't just another summer storm. It was the only thing standing between her 6-month-old daughter Lily and another night on the streets. The abandoned office space on the 32nd floor had become their reluctant sanctuary, a desperate choice made by a mother with nowhere else to turn. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya hadn't planned on becoming a trespasser. Just that morning, she'd been scrubbing toilets at the corporate high-rise as part of the overnight cleaning. Crew, a temporary job that paid cash and asked few questions. But when the violent storm had trapped them downtown and the shelter had reached capacity, desperation had won over caution. The hurricane warnings had emptied the building hours ago, or so she'd thought. "Shh, sweet girl," Maya whispered, cradling Lily against her chest as footsteps echoed down the hallway. The baby's eyes, wide and dark like her father's, stared up at her with innocent trust that broke Maya's heart. "We just need to stay quiet for a little while longer." She'd chosen the corner office because it had a small storage closet where they could hide, and because the nameplate on the door had read, Alexander Hargrove, CEO. Executive offices were always the emptiest after hours. She'd learned that, much from 2 months of night shifts, the footsteps stopped outside the door. Maya held her breath, pressing herself deeper into the closet's darkness as Lily squirmed against her. "Please don't cry, please don't cry," she silently begged. The doorknob turned. Light spilled into the office as a tall figure entered, silhouetted against the hallway's fluorescent glow. Even in shadow, Maya recognized the commanding presence of Alexander Hargrove, whose face graced the company's website and lobby portrait. The building's owner himself, of all the rotten luck. She might have remained undiscovered if not for the thunder that crashed overhead, startling Lily into a frightened wail. The cry pierced the silence like a siren. The closet door flew open. Maya blinked against the sudden brightness, clutching Lily protectively to her chest as she stared up into the startled face of one of Seattle's most powerful businessmen. "What the hell?" Alexander Hargrove's voice was deep and sharp with surprise. His eyes, a penetrating grey, moved from Maya to the infant in her arms, his expression shifting from shock to confusion. "Who are you, and what are you doing in my office?" Maya scrambled to her feet, her heart pounding. "I'm sorry, we needed somewhere to go until the storm passed. The shelters were full, and I didn't think anyone would be here, and—" She stopped, realizing she was rambling. "I clean here at night. I have a key card. I'm not a thief." Alexander's brow furrowed as he took in her appearance. The worn clothes, the small backpack that contained everything they owned, the exhaustion etched into her face. Then his gaze settled on Lily, who had quieted now, her tiny fingers curled around the edge of her tattered blanket. "You're hiding in my office during a hurricane with an infant." His tone had lost some of its edge, but the question still felt like an accusation. "I'm sorry," Maya repeated, adjusting Lily in her arms. "We'll leave right away." She moved to gather her things, wondering where they could possibly go with the rain still coming down in sheets. Alexander crossed his arms, blocking her exit. "You can't go out in that. It's only getting worse." He checked his watch, a sleek, expensive thing that probably cost more than she'd made in the past year. The National Weather Service just upgraded it to a Category 3. Maya swallowed hard. "We don't want to cause trouble. I can find somewhere else in the building to wait it out." "With a baby?" Alexander raised an eyebrow. "How old is she?" 6 months, Maya replied, surprised by the question. He studied them for a long moment, and Maya braced herself for security to be called, for the humiliation of being escorted from the premises, possibly arrested for trespassing. Instead, Alexander Hargrove sighed and ran a hand through his dark hair. "Look, I have an apartment on the top floor, A penthouse. It's secure, and you'll be safe there until the storm passes. Maya stared at him, certain she'd misheard. Your apartment? It's where I stay when work runs late or the weather's bad, he explained, his expression unreadable. Which right now it definitely is. Consider it a better option than a storage closet. Suspicion flared in Maya's chest. She'd received too many generous offers from men over the years to be naive. Why would you help us? Something shifted in Alexander's eyes, a flash of what might have been respect. Because there's a hurricane outside, you have a baby, and regardless of how you ended up in my closet, I'm not the kind of person who throws a mother and child into a storm. He paused. Also, frankly, it's been a hell of a day, and knowing you're not huddled in my storage closet will help me sleep better. Maya hesitated, weighing her options. The storm howled outside, rattling the windows with another fierce gust. Lily whimpered, sensing her mother's tension. Just until the storm passes, she finally agreed, clutching her backpack. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Alexander nodded. Of course, I'm not offering you a permanent residence, just a safe place for tonight. He stepped back, gesturing toward the door. I'm Alexander Hargrove, by the way, though I suppose you know that, given that you're in my office. Maya Collins, she replied, following him into the hallway. And this is Lily. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent and tense. Maya stood as far from Alexander as the confined space would allow, hyper-aware of the differences between them. His custom suit probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Her uniform, the pale blue polo and khaki pants required by the cleaning service, was faded from too many washes, and her sneakers were worn thin at the heels. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse, revealing a space that took Maya's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the storm's fury against Seattle's skyline, lightning illuminating the churning waters of Puget Sound in brilliant flashes. The apartment itself was minimalist but luxurious, all clean lines, modern furniture, and subdued lighting. The guest room is through there, Alexander said, pointing down a hallway. Bathrooms attached. Make yourself comfortable. He moved to a sleek kitchen area and opened the refrigerator. Are you hungry? The question caught Maya off guard. She'd been so focused on finding shelter that she hadn't acknowledged the hollow feeling in her stomach. Her last meal had been the half of a sandwich she'd saved from lunch, eaten hurriedly before her shift began. I'm fine, she lied, even as her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. Alexander gave her a skeptical look. There's pasta from a business dinner earlier. I can heat it up. Without waiting for her response, he pulled out containers and began transferring food to plates. Why are you here? Maya asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Everyone else evacuated hours ago. Alexander continued his preparations, his back to her. Quarterly reports due tomorrow. Storm or no storm, the board expects them. I sent my staff home but stayed to finish. He glanced over his shoulder. Why are you hiding in office buildings with a baby instead of somewhere safe? The directness of the question stung, but Maya appreciated the lack of pity in his tone. We were evicted last month. I've been working nights here, staying at shelters when I can, but they fill up fast when there's bad weather. She stroked Lily's fine hair, the baby now dozing against her shoulder. Tonight, we ran out of options. Alexander was silent for a moment, focusing on the food. Then, the father, not in the picture, Maya replied tersely. It was the simplest version of a complicated truth, that Daniel had walked out when she'd refused to terminate the pregnancy, that his final words to her had been that she was ruining both their lives with her stubbornness. Alexander nodded. asking no further questions as he placed a steaming plate on the counter. "Eat. I'll find something for her if she needs it." "I have formula in my bag," Maya said, cautiously approaching the counter. The pasta smelled incredible, rich with garlic and herbs, dotted with sundried tomatoes and grilled chicken. "But I don't want to impose any more than we already have. Eating food that would otherwise go to waste isn't imposing," Alexander replied, pouring himself a glass of water. "It's practical." As Maya ate, savoring each bite of what was undoubtedly the best meal she'd had in months, Alexander worked quietly at a laptop on the other side of the room. The storm continued to rage outside, but in the warm, secure penthouse it seemed less threatening. Lily slept peacefully in her arms, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. For the first time in weeks, Maya allowed herself to relax. Slightly, the constant vigilance of survival momentarily suspended. "You mentioned you work for the cleaning service," Alexander said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "How long?" "2 months," Maya replied, setting down her fork. "It's temporary until I can find something better, but most places won't. Hire me without permanent address, and I can't get a permanent address without steady income, so—" She trailed off, the familiar frustration rising. Alexander looked up from his laptop, his expression thoughtful. "What did you do before?" Maya hesitated. Sharing the truth meant admitting how far she'd fallen, but something about Alexander's direct gaze made lies seem pointless. "I was a data analyst at TechSphere Solutions. I had a master's in information systems and a good career trajectory. Then the company downsized after being acquired, and I was part of the layoffs." She didn't add that she'd been 5 months pregnant at the time, or how quickly her savings had evaporated between medical bills and rent. Something flashed in Alexander's eyes, surprise perhaps, or reassessment. "You're qualified for positions in my company. I'm also currently homeless with a baby and a significant gap in my employment history," Maya pointed out with a bitter smile. "Not exactly an attractive candidate." "You'd be surprised," Alexander replied, closing his laptop. "I'd rather hire someone who's demonstrated resilience in difficult circumstances than someone with a perfect resume, but no real-world testing." Maya stared at him, trying to decipher if this was genuine or merely polite conversation. "Is that a job offer, Mr. Hargrove?" "Alexander," he corrected, "and no, not yet. I make it a policy not to hire people I find hiding in my storage closets without at least a proper interview first." There was a hint of humor in his voice that softened the statement. Thunder crashed overhead, and the lights flickered momentarily. Lily stirred but didn't wake. "You should get some rest," Alexander said, standing. "The guest room has a crib. My sister stays here sometimes with her son when she visits from Chicago." Maya blinked in surprise. "A crib?" "It's a convertible, a thing that turns into a regular bed eventually. My nephew's 3 now, but it should work for her." He gestured toward the hallway. "There are clean towels in the bathroom if you want to shower, and probably some clothes that might fit you in. The dresser. My sister always leaves things behind." The offer of a hot shower was almost as tempting as the food had been. Maya couldn't remember the last time she'd been able to bathe properly, rather than the hurried sponge baths in public restrooms that had become her norm. "Thank you," she said, the words inadequate for the gratitude she felt. "For all of this." Alexander merely nodded, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. "Get some sleep, Maya. We can figure out next steps in the morning." The guest room was elegant, yet comfortable, with a queen-sized bed covered in plush bedding, and, as promised, a convertible crib in the corner. Maya gently laid Lily in it, marveling at how natural her daughter looked in such luxurious surroundings, as if this was the life she'd been meant for all along. The bathroom was equally impressive. Marble countertops, a rainfall shower, and an assortment of high-end toiletries that smelled like citrus and cedar. Maya stood under the hot water for longer than was probably polite, watching as months of tension spiraled down the drain with the soap suds. Wrapped in a soft towel, she found a drawer containing women's clothes. Casual things like yoga pants and t-shirts that Maya suspected cost more than her entire wardrobe despite their simplicity. She selected the plainest items she could find, trying to ignore the tags that confirmed her suspicions about their price. Clean, fed, and dressed in clothes that didn't smell of industrial cleaning products, Maya checked on Lily once more before crawling into bed. The mattress was cloud-soft, enveloping her tired body like an embrace. Despite her intention to remain vigilant, to not fully let her guard down in this strange man's home, exhaustion claimed her within minutes. Maya dreamed of falling, of clutching Lily as they tumbled through darkness together, only to land in a pile of spreadsheets and quarterly reports that dissolved beneath them like quicksand. She woke with a start, disoriented by the unfamiliar softness surrounding her. For a moment, panic seized her chest as she reached for Lily, only to find the crib empty. Heart racing, she stumbled from the bed, following the sound of a familiar giggle to the main living area. There, bathed in the golden light of early morning, was Alexander Hargrove, CEO of Meridian Enterprises, sitting cross-legged on his expensive area rug with Lily. The baby was propped against a cushion, gurgling happily as Alexander entertained her with what appeared to be a small stuffed elephant. She was awake and making that pre-crying noise, Alexander explained without looking up, somehow sensing Maya's presence. I didn't want her to wake you, so we've been having a chat about market trends. She seems particularly bullish on tech stocks. The absurdity of the scene, this powerful businessman playing with her daughter at dawn while discussing economics, startled a laugh from Maya. She's very opinionated for someone who can't hold her own head up consistently. Strong. Convictions are a valuable trait in business, Alexander replied with mock seriousness, finally looking up at her. Something in his expression shifted as he took in her appearance in the morning light, but he quickly masked whatever he was thinking. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a washed-clean sky and the gentle patter of residual raindrops. Seattle's skyline gleamed in the distance, buildings catching the sunrise in flashes of gold and amber. "Coffee?" Alexander offered, rising smoothly to his feet. He was dressed more casually than the previous night, in dark jeans and a simple grey sweater that somehow still managed to look expensive. "Please," Maya agreed, moving to collect Lily, who protested with a disgruntled noise at being separated from her new friend. As Alexander prepared coffee in a machine that looked more suited to a high-end cafe than a home kitchen, Maya took the opportunity to study him. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of his office, he had seemed intimidating, all sharp angles and stern authority. Here, in the soft morning light, she could see the humanity beneath the power, the slight shadows under his eyes from working. Late, the way one corner of his mouth quirked higher than the other when he almost smiled, the gentleness in his hands as he'd played with Lily. "Did you always want to be a CEO?" Maya asked, surprising herself with the question. Alexander paused, considering. "No, I wanted to be an architect, design buildings that would change skylines and last centuries." He handed her a steaming mug. "But my father had built Meridian from nothing, and there was never really a question about who would take over when he retired." "Do you regret it?" Maya cradled the mug, savoring its warmth. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I've built something different than what my father intended. Transformed the company into something I can be proud of." He leaned against the counter, studying her over his own coffee. "What about you? Did you always want to be a data analyst?" Maya smiled ruefully. I wanted to design video games, actually, create worlds where anything was possible. She glanced down at Lily, who was contentedly chewing on her own fist. Life had other plans. Alexander nodded, understanding in his eyes. It usually does. A comfortable silence settled between them as they sipped their coffee, the city awakening beyond the windows. There was something surreal about the moment, this peaceful domestic scene between two strangers from vastly different worlds, brought together by a storm and circumstance. "I meant what I said last night," Alexander said finally, "about a position at Meridian. We have an opening in data analytics that I think would suit your qualifications." Maya set down her mug, suspicion rising once more. "Why would you offer a job to someone who broke into your office?" "Technically, you had a key card," Alexander pointed out. "And I'm not offering charity, Maya. I'm looking at a qualified professional who's fallen on hard times. You have the skills we need, and we can provide the stability you need. It's a business decision. A convenient one that lets you feel good about helping the poor homeless girl," Maya countered, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. Alexander's expression hardened slightly. "I don't need to hire you to feel good. About myself, Meridian has a foundation that donates millions annually to homeless services. If I wanted to ease my conscience, I'd write another check." He set down his coffee with deliberate care. "I'm offering you a job because you're qualified, and because in the past 12 hours I've seen enough of your character to know you'd be an asset to my company." Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks, embarrassment mixing with a reluctant admiration for his directness. "I'm sorry. That was unfair." Alexander's expression softened. "Life hasn't given you much reason to trust unexpected opportunities. I understand. In that..." Before Maya could respond, her phone chimed from the guest room, an old model with a cracked screen that she kept for emergencies. "Excuse me," she said, hurrying to retrieve it. The message was from Vanessa, a friend from her TechSphere days who occasionally let Maya shower at her apartment when schedules aligned. "Everything okay?" Alexander asked when she returned, noting her troubled expression. "It's nothing," Maya said automatically, then reconsidered. "Actually, it's my friend letting me know that the shelter on Pike Street has a few openings tonight, if we get there early enough." Alexander frowned. "You don't need a shelter. I told you. I'm offering you a job." "A job doesn't solve immediate housing issues," Maya pointed out pragmatically. "Even if you hired me today, I wouldn't get paid for at least 2 weeks. No landlord is going to rent to someone without a deposit and first month's rent, especially someone with a recent eviction on their record." Alexander considered this, then nodded decisively. "Meridian owns several apartment buildings in the city, part of our diversification strategy. We keep units available for visiting executives and occasionally for employees relocating from other areas." He met her gaze directly. "I can arrange temporary housing while you get back on your feet." Maya stared at him, waiting for the catch, for the moment when this dream would dissolve and she'd find herself back in the storage closet, Lily crying from hunger, security approaching to escort them out. "Why?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do all this for us?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the windows, to the city beyond. 3 years ago, I was driving home late from a board meeting. It was raining, not a storm like last night, just a typical Seattle drizzle. I saw a woman huddled in a bus shelter with a child, both of them soaking wet despite the partial covering. He turned back to Maya, his eyes holding a pain that seemed deeply personal. I kept driving, told myself someone else would help, that it wasn't my problem. The next morning I read that a woman and her son had been found in that same bus shelter, hypothermia already setting in. They survived, but barely. His jaw tightened. I recognized her from the news photo. It was the same woman I'd driven past. That's why Meridian has a foundation for homeless services, Maya realized. Alexander nodded. It's also why I'll never again ignore someone in need when I have the power to help. He met her gaze directly. I'm not offering you charity, Maya. I'm offering you the opportunity you deserve, the one that circumstances have denied you. What you do with it is entirely up to you. Lily chose that moment to let out a sharp cry, her patience with the morning's events apparently exhausted. Maya lifted her daughter, bouncing her gently as she considered Alexander's words. When would this job start? She asked finally. Monday, Alexander replied. Though given the circumstances, we could arrange for an advance on your first paycheck to help with immediate expenses. Maya took a deep breath, weighing her options. The rational part of her brain warned that this was too good to be true, that trusting too quickly could lead to disappointment or worse. But another part, the part that had fought so hard to keep herself and Lily afloat, that had refused to give up, even when everything seemed hopeless, recognized the lifeline being offered. I'd need to see the job description first, she said carefully, and understand exactly what the housing arrangement would entail. A smile broke across Alexander's face, not the polite, professional expression he'd worn until now, but something genuine that transformed his features and reached his eyes. Absolutely. I'll have HR send over the details today. As the morning sun climbed higher, bathing the penthouse in warm light, Maya felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not quite hope. She'd been disappointed too many times to trust that feeling, but something adjacent to it, a possibility, a path forward, where before there had been only dead ends. She hadn't planned on hiding in Alexander Hargrove's office during a hurricane. She certainly hadn't expected that a desperate choice made in a moment of need would lead to this moment, standing in a penthouse with a job offer and the promise of stability for her daughter. Life, Maya reflected as she gazed out at the rain-washed city, had a strange way of creating opportunity from disaster. Sometimes it seemed you had to weather the storm to find your way home. The Meridian Tower apartment was exactly as Alexander had described, a modest one-bedroom on the 24th floor with basic furnishings and a small balcony overlooking the city. It wasn't luxurious like his penthouse, but to Maya, who had spent the past weeks shuttling between shelters and public spaces, it felt like a palace. It's temporary corporate housing, Alexander explained as he unlocked the door 3 days after the storm. Usually for visiting executives or new transfers, but it's yours for the next 3 months while you get settled. Maya stepped inside. Lily cradled against her chest and tried to absorb the reality of having walls that belonged, however temporarily, to them. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and new carpet. Sunlight streamed through spotless windows, illuminating a space that felt impossibly vast after weeks of confinement. 3 months is generous, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Thank you. Alexander shrugged, setting down the single suitcase containing their meager belongings. After their night in the penthouse, he had arranged for Maya and Lily to stay in a hotel until the corporate apartment became available, another act of kindness that Maya was still struggling to process. The kitchen is stocked with basics, he continued, seemingly oblivious to her emotional state, and there's a welcome to Meridian package on the counter with your employee handbook, building information, and your advance. He pointed to a thick envelope. Your official start date is Monday, but take the weekend to settle in. Maya nodded, still unable to believe this sudden turn in their fortunes. Just 4 days ago, she had been cleaning offices at night and spending days searching for affordable daycare options that didn't exist. Now, she was holding a key to an apartment and preparing to start a job in her field on Monday. I don't know how to thank you, she said finally. Alexander's expression remained professional, but his eyes softened slightly. Succeed, That's how you thank me. Show up, do good work, rebuild your life." He glanced at Lily, who was watching him with curious eyes. "Both your lives." After he left, Maya explored their new temporary home with a sense of wonder. The kitchen gleamed with stainless steel appliances. The bedroom contained not only a queen-sized bed, but also a proper crib for Lily. The bathroom featured a tub deep enough to soak in and fluffy towels stacked neatly on shelves. But it was the second bedroom, a small space she had assumed would be empty, that brought tears to her eyes. Inside was a changing table, a rocking chair, and a bookshelf filled with children's books. A note on the changing table read simply, "Every analyst needs a proper home office, and every baby needs a proper nursery. A.H." Maya sank into the rocking chair, cradling Lily close as tears slipped down her cheeks. The kindness was overwhelming, especially after months of indifference and closed doors. "Things are going to be different now," she whispered to Lily, who reached up to grab a strand of her hair. "We're going to be okay." The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Maya used part of her advance to buy professional clothes at a second-hand store, carefully selecting pieces that could be mixed and matched to create the illusion of an extensive wardrobe. She practiced introducing herself as Maya Collins, data analyst, in the mirror, trying to reclaim the confidence that had once come naturally. By Monday morning, standing in the elevator that would take her to Meridian's main offices on the 30th floor, Maya felt like two people occupying the same body. One was the desperate mother who had hidden in a storage closet during a storm. The other was a qualified professional returning to her field after an extended absence. The elevator doors opened to reveal a reception area gleaming with marble and glass. Behind a sleek desk sat a woman with a welcoming smile and impeccably styled hair. "Maya Collins?" the receptionist asked. "I'm Jennifer. HR is expecting you for orientation. Let me show you the way." Maya followed, hyper-aware of how her second-hand blazer differed from the tailored suits around her. The office buzzed with Monday morning energy, people clutching coffee cups, discussing weekend plans, preparing for meetings. Normal workplace routines that had once been part of her daily life now seemed foreign, like customs from a country she had visited long ago. "Don't be nervous," Jennifer said kindly as they walked. Alexander, Mr. Hargrove, spoke highly of your qualifications. "The data team is excited to have you join them." Maya nearly stumbled at this information. "Mr. Hargrove mentioned me specifically," Jennifer nodded. "He rarely involves himself in department-level hiring, so when he does, people take notice." She paused outside a conference room door. "Between us, it's made you something of a curiosity." Before Maya could process this, Jennifer ushered her into the room where a friendly HR representative named Marcus was waiting with paperwork and a company laptop. The morning passed in a whirlwind of forms, policies, and introductions. By lunchtime, Maya's head was spinning with new information, but a sense of purpose had begun to replace her anxiety. Her new team, led by a brisk woman named Diane Chen, welcomed her with professional courtesy. If they wondered about her connection to the CEO, they didn't ask directly, though Maya noticed curious glances and whispered conversations that stopped. When she approached, "We're working on consumer behavior analysis for the new healthcare portal," Diane explained, showing Maya to her workstation. "I'll have Raj bring you up to speed on the datasets we're using. I expect you'll need a few days to get oriented. But after that, I'd like you to take point on demographic segmentation." Maya nodded, grateful for the clear direction and the absence of special treatment. "I'll review the background materials today and come to you with any questions." Diane smiled, approval in her eyes. "That's exactly what I want to hear." By mid-afternoon, Maya was deep in spreadsheets and documentation, the familiar rhythm of data analysis calming her nerves. This was what she knew, what she was good at, numbers and patterns that revealed stories about human behavior when properly interpreted. "You look like you've been here for years, not hours," commented Raj, a fellow analyst with kind eyes and a quick wit. "Most new hires spend their first day looking shell-shocked." Maya smiled, grateful for the friendly overture. "I'm sure the shell shock will hit once I try to absorb all these proprietary systems, but the fundamentals are familiar." "Word around the office is that you have a direct line to the boss," Raj said, his tone carefully casual. "That you impressed him so much he created a position for you." Maya tensed, unsure how to respond. The truth was too complicated, too personal to share with someone she'd just met. But she also didn't want to begin her new position with lies or evasions. "Mr. Hargrove and I met under unusual circumstances," she said finally. "He recognized that my skills matched a need within the company, and he gave me an opportunity I'm determined to make the most of." It wasn't the full story, but it wasn't untrue. Raj seemed to accept this, nodding thoughtfully. "Hargrove has a reputation for seeing potential where others don't. It's why Meridian outperforms our competitors consistently." He grinned suddenly. "Just don't expect special treatment. If anything, he'll watch your work more closely." The warning, delivered with good humor, nevertheless sent a flutter of anxiety through Maya's stomach. The last thing she wanted was to disappoint the man who had changed her life. The remainder of the day passed quickly, and at 5 o'clock, Maya found herself facing a new challenge: daycare pickup. She had arranged for Lily to attend the Meridian Corporate Daycare Center, another employee benefit she hadn't expected. But the prospect of retrieving her daughter while colleagues might be watching made her nervous. Would they see her differently? Once they knew she was a single mother, would assumptions be made about her professionalism or commitment? These fears evaporated the moment she entered the daycare center on the building's second floor. The bright, cheerful space was filled with children of various ages, and several other parents were already there for pickup. A caregiver approached, Lily in her arms. "Ms. Collins, your daughter had a wonderful first day," the woman said, transferring Lily to Maya's eager embrace. "She's quite popular with the staff. Such a happy baby." Maya hugged Lily close, inhaling her sweet baby scent, and feeling the small body wiggle with excitement at their reunion. In that moment, any concerns about professional perception seemed trivial compared to the joy of holding her daughter after hours apart. "Thank you for taking such good care of her," Maya said sincerely. "That's what we're here for," the caregiver replied with a warm smile. "We'll see you both tomorrow." As Maya carried Lily to the elevator, a familiar voice called her name. She turned to find Alexander approaching, his usual tailored suit exchanged for what appeared to be workout clothes. "I was just heading to the company gym," he explained, noting her surprised expression. "How was your first day?" "Good," Maya replied, shifting Lily to her hip. "Everyone's been welcoming, and the work is exactly what I hoped for." Alexander nodded, seeming pleased. His gaze shifted to Lily, who was regarding him with wide-eyed fascination. "And how did the little economist enjoy daycare?" "According to her caregivers, she charmed everyone," Maya said with a smile, "though she seems to have lost her interest in market trends." Alexander laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his usually serious face. "She's diversifying her interests. Smart strategy." They stepped into the elevator together, and Maya was acutely aware of the curious glances from other employees in the lobby. The CEO in gym clothes chatting with the new hire and her baby. It was undoubtedly fuel for office gossip. "People are staring," she murmured as the doors closed. Alexander shrugged, unconcerned. "People always stare. It comes with the position." He glanced at her. "Does it bother you?" "A little," Maya admitted. I don't want people to think I got this job for any reason other than my qualifications. They won't, Alexander said confidently. Not once they see your work. Diane already messaged me that you've exceeded her initial expectations, and she's not easily impressed. Maya blinked in surprise. She contacted you about me? I asked all department heads to provide feedback on new hires after their first day, Alexander replied smoothly. Standard procedure. Somehow, Maya doubted that was entirely true, but she appreciated his attempt to normalize their interaction. Will you be all right getting home? He asked as the elevator reached the parking garage. Maya nodded. I bought a bus pass with my advance. The apartment is only a few stops away. Alexander frowned slightly. The buses can be unreliable, especially with a baby. Take my car service today, I insist, he added when she began to protest. Consider it part of your first day onboarding. Before Maya could argue further, he was texting instructions to his driver. David will meet you at the south entrance in 5 minutes. He's very reliable and has car seats available. The offer was too practical to refuse, especially with Lily beginning to fuss after a long day of new experiences. Thank you, Maya said simply. Alexander nodded, his expression unreadable once more. You did well today, Maya. Keep it up. With that, he strode toward the gym, leaving Maya to wonder at the complex man who seemed determined to smooth her path in ways both large and small. The following weeks fell into a pattern that began to feel almost normal. Maya threw herself into her work, determined to justify Alexander's faith in her abilities. She arrived early, stayed late when daycare hours permitted, and quickly became an integral part of the data team. Diane assigned her increasingly complex projects, and Maya met each challenge with the fierce determination that had kept her and Lily alive during their darkest days. Her colleagues, initially curious about her connection to the CEO, soon accepted her based on the quality of her work. Raj became a friend, inviting Maya to join the team for occasional after-work gatherings. She declined more often than not, prioritizing her limited time with Lily, but the invitations themselves represented a kind of acceptance she had feared might be beyond reach. Alexander remained a distant presence, glimpsed in meetings or passing, through common areas, always with a brief nod or professional greeting for Maya. The personal connection they had shared during the storm seemed to have been deliberately set aside, replaced by a strictly professional relationship that Maya told herself was for the best. Until the night she worked late on a critical presentation and emerged from her focused state to find the office dark and empty, save for a single light in Alexander's corner office. Checking her watch, Maya gasped. It was nearly 9, well past Lily's bedtime, and hours after she should have picked her up from daycare. Heart racing, she grabbed her phone, only to find multiple missed calls from an unknown number. Before she could panic further, Alexander's office door opened and he stepped out, Lily asleep against his shoulder. The daycare tried to reach you, he explained quietly, approaching her desk. When they couldn't, they called me as your emergency contact. I picked her up around 6. Maya stared at him, emotions crashing through her. Relief that Lily was safe, mortification at her maternal failure, confusion at the sight of Alexander Hargrove, CEO, cradling her sleeping baby with such natural ease. I'm so sorry, she whispered, reaching for Lily. I was working on the healthcare portal analysis and completely lost track of time. I've never done that before. Alexander transferred Lily carefully to her arms. It happens to every working parent eventually, he said, his voice gentle. The daycare staff understood, and Lily and I had dinner in my office while I finished some calls. Maya hugged Lily close, breathing in her familiar scent, now mingled with something that must have been Alexander's cologne, a subtle, woodsy fragrance that wasn't unpleasant. I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem adequate. It's not necessary, Alexander replied, gathering Maya's belongings and handing her the diaper bag. David is waiting downstairs to take you both home. As they walked to the elevator, Maya struggled to reconcile this Alexander, considerate, understanding, comfortable with a baby, with the powerful CEO whose name made board members nervous. "Why did the daycare call you?" she asked suddenly, realizing the implication of his earlier statement. "I don't remember listing you as an emergency contact." Alexander had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I may have suggested to HR that all single parents in the company should list a workplace contact in addition to their personal emergency contacts, for situations exactly like this one. And you just happened to volunteer for that role in my case," Maya said, a smile tugging at her lips despite her embarrassment. "It seemed logical given our prior acquaintance," Alexander replied, with studied casualness. In the soft lighting of the empty hallway, with Lily sleeping peacefully between them, the professional distance Alexander had maintained these past weeks seemed to waver. Maya found herself noticing details she had forced herself to ignore, the way his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners when he was being sincere, the controlled strength in his hands as he'd held Lily, the subtle protectiveness in his posture as he escorted them to the waiting car. "Why have you been avoiding me?" she asked impulsively as they reached the garage. Alexander looked startled by the direct question. "I haven't been avoiding you. I've been giving you space to establish yourself without the complication of our unusual introduction." He held her gaze steadily. "Your colleagues needed to see you as Maya Collins, data analyst, not as someone with a personal connection to me." The answer was logical, considerate even, but Maya sensed there was more he wasn't saying. Before she could press further, David appeared with the car, and the moment passed. "Get some rest," Alexander said as he opened the car door for her. "The presentation isn't due until Friday. You have time to refine it." Maya settled into the back seat, securing Lily in the car seat David had thoughtfully installed. "Thank you again for everything." Alexander's expression softened briefly. "You're welcome, Maya." Then the professional mask slipped back into place. "I'll see you tomorrow." As the car pulled away, Maya found herself wondering about the man behind that mask. The CEO, who worked late but made time to feed a baby dinner. The powerful executive who remembered the details of her presentation schedule. The man who had found her hiding in his office during a storm and changed the trajectory of her life. For the first time since that night, Maya allowed herself to acknowledge that her interest in Alexander Hargrove might extend beyond gratitude. That beneath her professional determination to succeed at Meridian might lie something more personal, more complicated. It was a realization as unsettling as it was unexpected, and one she had no idea how to address. Alexander had given her and Lily a chance at a new life. The last thing she wanted was to complicate that gift with inappropriate feelings. But as she carried her sleeping daughter into their temporary apartment that night, Maya couldn't help wondering if the connection she'd felt in those first hours of the storm had been entirely one-sided, or if Alexander felt it too, hidden beneath his careful professionalism. It was a question she had no answer for, and perhaps that was for the best. Some storms, Maya reflected, as she gently placed Lily in her crib, were better left unweathered. "I need someone from data analytics for the Phoenix presentation," Diane announced during the weekly team meeting 6 weeks into Maya's employment at Meridian. "Alexander wants our healthcare portal projections presented directly to the client." Maya kept her expression neutral, though her pulse quickened. Phoenix Health Systems was Meridian's largest healthcare client, and the portal represented millions in potential revenue. This wasn't just any presentation, it was a high-stakes opportunity. "Maya should go," Raj suggested, surprising her. She's been leading the demographic analysis, and her visualization work is what convinced the board to greenlight the additional features. Diane considered this, tapping her pen against her tablet. "It would be your first client presentation," she said to Maya. "Are you comfortable with that level of visibility?" Before Maya could answer, Jennifer from reception appeared at the conference room door. "Sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Hargrove is asking for Maya in his office. He says it's urgent." A ripple of curious glances passed around the table. Though Maya had been at Meridian for over a month, her interactions with Alexander had remained strictly professional and infrequent since the night he'd cared for Lily. Being summoned to his office was unusual enough to raise eyebrows. "We'll continue this discussion when you return," Diane said, dismissing Maya with a nod. As Maya followed Jennifer to Alexander's office, she mentally reviewed her recent work, wondering what could be urgent enough to interrupt a department meeting. Had she made an error in her analysis? Was there a problem with Lily at the daycare? "Go right in," Jennifer said when they reached Alexander's office. "He's expecting you." Alexander wasn't alone. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows was a woman Maya had never seen before. Tall, elegantly dressed, with Alexander's distinctive grey eyes and an expression that could only be described as skeptical. "Maya, thank you for coming," Alexander said, rising from behind his desk. "I'd like you to meet my sister, Victoria Hargrove Reynolds. Victoria, this is Maya Collins, our newest data analyst." Victoria extended a manicured hand, her grip firm, but not aggressive. "So you're the miracle worker Alexander's been talking about, the one who transformed our healthcare portal analytics." Maya blinked, caught off guard by both the introduction and the implication that Alexander discussed her work with his family. "I'm just doing my job," she replied, glancing at Alexander questioningly. "Victoria is our Chief Innovation Officer," Alexander explained. "She's based in our London office, but she's in town for the Phoenix presentation." "The presentation we're discussing right now in my team meeting," Maya said, unable to keep a hint of confusion from her voice. Victoria smiled, a sharp expression that reminded Maya of Alexander at his most businesslike. "That's precisely why I asked Alexander to call you up here. I need someone who understands the data to accompany me to Phoenix, and my brother suggested you were the best choice." Maya felt a complex mixture of pride and apprehension. Being recommended by Alexander was a professional coup, but presenting to a major client alongside a C-suite executive was far beyond what she had expected at this stage. "I'd be honored," she said carefully, "but I should mention that I have childcare considerations that might complicate travel arrangements." Victoria waved a dismissive hand. "Alexander mentioned your daughter. We've arranged for Sarah, Alexander's personal assistant, to accompany you as a childcare provider during the presentation. She has extensive experience with my children during business trips." Maya glanced at Alexander, who was watching the exchange with an unreadable expression. Had he already assumed she would accept? Was this special treatment, or simply efficient problem-solving? "When would we leave?" Maya asked, mentally calculating what she would need to prepare. "Tomorrow morning," Victoria replied. "The presentation is Wednesday afternoon. We'd return Thursday." "That's very soon," Maya said, trying to keep the panic from her voice. "Less than 24 hours to prepare for a major client presentation, arrange for Lily's needs, and pack for her first business trip." "You'll have the flight to finalize any preparations," Victoria said briskly. "My assistant will email you the details. If there's nothing else, I have a board call in 10 minutes. The dismissal was clear. Maya nodded, still processing the abrupt change in her plans. "I'll make the necessary arrangements." "Excellent," Victoria said, turning her attention to her tablet. "Alexander, walk me through the Q3 projections before my call." It was a clear dismissal as Maya turned to Alexander caught her eye briefly. "Stop by my office before you leave today," he said, his tone making it a request rather than an order. "We can discuss any concerns about the trip." Back in her team meeting, Maya explained the situation to an impressed Diane and curious colleagues. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of preparation, reviewing data, refining slides, coordinating with Victoria's assistant. By the time most of the office had emptied for the evening, Maya still had hours of work ahead. After picking up Lily from daycare and settling her with a bottle in the small break room adjacent to her workstation, Maya focused on finalizing her presentation materials. She was so absorbed that she didn't notice Alexander approaching until he spoke. "You should have come to my office," he said, startling her from her concentration. "I told Sarah to expect you hours ago." Maya looked up, blinking away spreadsheet figures. "I'm sorry, I got caught up in preparation. There's so much to organize before tomorrow." Alexander glanced at Lily, who was contentedly playing with a teething ring in her portable seat. "How are you managing the childcare logistics?" "I'm still working on that," Maya admitted. "The corporate daycare can't accommodate overnight care, and my usual backup is out of town this week." Alexander nodded, as if confirming something he'd already suspected. "That's why I wanted to speak with you. Sarah has volunteered to stay at your apartment with Lily while you're at the actual presentation. For the rest of the trip, we've arranged a suite at the hotel with a connecting room for Sarah and Lily." Maya stared at him, caught between gratitude and discomfort. "That's incredibly generous, but it feels like special treatment. I don't want my colleagues to think that you're receiving accommodations any working parent at your level would receive," Alexander interrupted. "Because you are. Meridian has a family-friendly travel policy for all employees. The only difference is that most people have more than 24 hours to arrange childcare." His matter-of-fact tone eased some of Maya's concerns. "Still, having your personal assistant provide childcare seems above and beyond company policy." Alexander's expression softened slightly. "Sarah volunteered when she heard about the situation. She adores children and rarely gets to travel since her own kids are in college now." He hesitated, then added, "And yes, I may have expedited some arrangements given the circumstances, but nothing that wouldn't be available to any employee in a similar situation." Maya wasn't entirely convinced, but she couldn't deny the practical value of the offer. "Thank you," she said simply. "I was worried about how to manage everything on such short notice." "You don't have to do everything alone anymore, Maya," Alexander said quietly. "That's what being part of a company means, having resources and support beyond yourself." The statement was professional on the surface, but something in his tone suggested a deeper meaning. Before Maya could respond, Lily let out a squeal, dropping her teething ring and reaching toward Alexander with chubby arms. To Maya's surprise, Alexander responded immediately, crouching to retrieve the toy and returning it to Lily with a gentle smile. "Hello again, economist," he said softly. "Are you helping your mother prepare for her big presentation?" Lily babbled, happily grabbing for Alexander's tie with determined fingers. He allowed it, seemingly unbothered by the potential damage to what was undoubtedly an expensive accessory. "She remembers you," Maya observed, watching the interaction with a strange tightness in her chest. "Babies are remarkably perceptive," Alexander replied, carefully extracting his tie from Lily's grip. "And we did spend several hours together that evening." The reminder of the night Alexander had cared for Lily hung between them, an intimacy neither had acknowledged since it occurred. Maya had convinced herself it was a professional courtesy, nothing more. But watching him now, the natural way he interacted with her daughter, she wondered if there was more to his interest than professional obligation. "Victoria seems intense," Maya said. changing the subject to safer ground. Alexander smiled. Riley, that's a diplomatic way of putting it. My sister is brilliant but demanding. She expects excellence and has little patience for anything less. Is that a warning? Maya asked, only half joking. An observation, Alexander corrected. Victoria requested you specifically after reviewing your work. That's a compliment. From her, even if it doesn't feel like one given the timeline. Maya's eyebrows rose. She requested me. I assumed you recommended me. I would have, Alexander acknowledged, but she beat me to it. Your reputation is growing, Maya. People notice exceptional work. The praise warmed her, especially coming from him. I should finish preparing, she said, glancing at her screen. There's still so much to do before tomorrow. Alexander nodded, rising to his feet. Sarah will meet you at your apartment at 7 a.m. The company car will take you both to the airport, where you'll meet Victoria at the private terminal. Private terminal? Maya echoed, feeling increasingly out of her depth. Meridian maintains a corporate jet for executive travel, Alexander explained, another perk of traveling with the CIO. As he turned to leave, Maya called after him impulsively. Why didn't you tell me it was Victoria who requested me? Why let me think it was your recommendation? Alexander paused, considering her question. Would it have changed your decision to accept? No, Maya admitted, but it would have changed how I felt about it. That's why, Alexander said simply. You're more confident when you believe the opportunity came through merit, not connection. And in this case it did. Victoria doesn't do favors, even for family. With that, he left, leaving Maya to ponder the complex motivations of the Hargrove siblings and her own place within their corporate world. The Phoenix presentation exceeded even Maya's highest expectations. Victoria, for all her intimidating demeanor, proved to be a masterful presenter, seamlessly integrating Maya's data analysis into a compelling vision for the healthcare portal. The clients were impressed, asking informed questions that Maya answered with growing confidence. By the end of the session, Phoenix had not only committed to the expanded portal features, but had expressed interest in additional Meridian services. That went exceptionally well, Victoria remarked as they left the Phoenix headquarters. Your grasp of the demographic nuances was impressive, especially under pressure. Coming from Victoria, the comment felt like the highest praise. Thank you for the opportunity, Maya replied sincerely. It was invaluable experience. Victoria studied, her with those penetrating grey eyes so similar to Alexander's. You know, when Alexander first told me about finding you in his office during that storm, I thought he'd lost his mind, offering you a position. Maya tensed, unprepared for the abrupt change in topic. He told you about that? Of course, Victoria said with a slight smile. We're siblings and business partners. We don't keep many secrets. She gestured for their driver to wait as they reached the car. What interests me is that he recognized something in you during that bizarre encounter that justified taking a risk. And now I see it too. What's that? Maya asked, genuinely curious. Resilience, Victoria replied without hesitation. The ability to adapt to changing circumstances without compromising standards. It's rare and valuable, especially in uncertain markets. She opened the car door. Meridian needs people like you, Maya. Remember that when you're considering your future with us? The conversation left Maya thoughtful during the flight home. Sarah had reported that Lily was thriving, enjoying the hotel's amenities and charming everyone she encountered. The work-life balance Maya had feared impossible seemed potentially within reach with the right support and environment. When they landed in Seattle, Maya expected to find Sarah waiting with Lily at the private terminal. Instead, Alexander himself stood beside the car, Lily securely in his arms, engaged in what appeared to be a serious conversation with the baby. The quarterly projections are promising, but I value your perspective on market volatility, he was saying solemnly as Maya approached, fighting a smile at the absurd scene. Do you recommend aggressive expansion or conservative consolidation? Lily responded by patting his cheek with a drooly hand, which Alexander accepted with remarkable dignity. A balanced approach, then. Very wise. Should I be concerned? And that you're discussing corporate strategy with my 6-month-old? Maya asked, unable to suppress her amusement. Alexander looked up, a rare, genuine smile transforming his usually serious face. Lily has valuable insights, very forward-thinking for someone who can't form sentences yet. Maya reached for her daughter, who transferred to her arms with happy babbles. Where's Sarah? I thought she was bringing Lily to meet us. She had a family emergency this morning, Alexander explained. Nothing serious, but she needed to leave immediately. I offered to step in. Maya raised an eyebrow. The CEO of Meridian Enterprises took time out of his schedule to babysit. I had a light morning, Alexander said with a shrug, and Lily and I are old friends. He opened the car door for them. Besides, it gave me a chance to hear about the presentation directly from Victoria. She was impressed. As they drove back to Meridian Tower, Maya found herself studying Alexander surreptitiously. The man who had found her hiding in his office during a storm had become something more complex than a benefactor or employer. He was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve, powerful yet surprisingly gentle, professionally distant yet personally involved in ways that defied easy categorization. You're staring, Alexander observed without looking at her, his attention apparently focused on the passing scenery. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks. I'm trying to figure you out. An interesting data project, he replied with that almost smile. What's your analysis so far? Inconclusive, Maya admitted. There are too many contradictions in the data set. Alexander turned to face her then, his expression thoughtful. Perhaps you're looking for patterns that don't exist. People are rarely consistent, especially in complex situations. Like finding a homeless mother and baby in your office and deciding to offer them a job and apartment instead of calling security, Maya suggested. Exactly like that, Alexander agreed. Though I prefer to think of it as recognizing an opportunity disguised as a problem. Before Maya could respond, they arrived at Meridian Tower. As she gathered Lily's things, Alexander touched her arm lightly. Have dinner with me tomorrow night, he said, the words somewhere between a question and a statement. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Maya hesitated, sensing a shift in their carefully maintained professional relationship. Is this about work? Partially, Alexander admitted, but not entirely. The honest answer surprised her. All right, she agreed, but I'll need to arrange childcare for Lily. Bring her, Alexander said immediately. The restaurant I have in mind is very family-friendly, despite its Michelin star. After he left, Maya stood in her apartment processing the invitation. Was this a business dinner with personal elements, or a personal dinner with business pretexts? The distinction felt important, though she couldn't articulate exactly why. Her phone chimed with a message from Raj. Team drinks tonight to celebrate. Phoenix success. Diane's buying first round. Maya smiled at the normalcy of the invitation, the reminder that beyond the complicated dynamics with Alexander, she was building a life and career that stood on their own merits. She texted back, her acceptance, grateful for colleagues who were becoming friends. That evening, as Maya enjoyed celebrating with her team, she found herself sharing stories about Lily and receiving parenting advice from several colleagues who had children of their own. The isolation that had defined her early motherhood was giving way to community, people who saw her as both a professional and a mother, without expecting her to diminish either role. To Maya, Diane toasted, raising her glass. Who impressed Victoria Hargrove Reynolds, which I previously thought was scientifically impossible. Laughter and cheers followed, warming Maya with a sense of belonging she had almost forgotten was possible. As she looked around at her colleagues' friendly faces, she realized how far she had come from that desperate night in Alexander's office, not just financially or professionally, but emotionally. She was reclaiming parts of herself that hardship had buried: confidence, ambition, connection. Later, walking home through the mild spring evening with Lily sleeping in her stroller, Maya reflected on Alexander's dinner invitation. Whatever he wanted to discuss, she would approach it with the same resilience Victoria had identified in her, adapting to circumstances without compromising her standards or identity. The storm that had driven her to hide in Alexander's office had changed the course of her life, but the person navigating that new course was still fundamentally Maya, stronger perhaps, more confident certainly, but still guided by the same core values and determination that had kept her and Lily going through their darkest days. Tomorrow's dinner might represent another turning point, another unexpected opportunity or challenge. But for the first time in months, Maya felt fully equipped to face whatever came next, not as a desperate woman seeking shelter from a storm, but as someone who had weathered that storm and emerged stronger for it. The restaurant Alexander had chosen was nestled in a renovated boathouse overlooking Lake Union, its windows reflecting the sunset in shades of amber and rose. Despite its elegant exterior, the atmosphere inside was warm and unpretentious, with several families occupying tables alongside business dinners and romantic couples. "Mr. Hargrove, welcome back," the hostess greeted them, her smile widening as she noticed Lily in Maya's arms. "And you've brought a new dining companion. We have your usual table ready with the requested accommodations." Maya raised an eyebrow at Alexander as they followed the hostess to a corner table with stunning water views. A high-end wooden chair waited beside one seat, along with what appeared to be a small basket of baby-appropriate toys. "You've been planning this," she observed, as Alexander held out her chair. "I like to be prepared," he replied, settling into his own seat across from her. "It's a habit that served me well in business and life." The hostess offered them menus and informed them that their server would bring a selection of appetizers, another arrangement Alexander had made in advance, apparently. "You said you wanted to discuss something," Maya prompted once they were alone, curious about the purpose behind such careful preparations. Alexander nodded, his expression more serious than usual. "Your 3-month corporate housing arrangement ends next week." Maya's stomach tightened. She had been so focused on establishing herself at Meridian that the temporary nature of their housing situation had receded in her consciousness. "Yes, I've been looking at apartments within my budget. There are a few possibilities, though none as convenient to the office." "I have an alternative proposal," Alexander said, pausing as their server arrived with a tray of appetizers and took their drink orders: wine for Alexander, sparkling water for Maya. Once they were alone again, he continued, "Meridian owns a residential building 3 blocks from the office. It's primarily long-term corporate housing for executives and visiting partners, but there are several units reserved for what we call our talent retention program." Maya tilted her head, intrigued despite her wariness. "I haven't heard of this program." "It's relatively new," Alexander admitted, "part of our benefits redesigned to attract and retain top talent in a competitive market. Qualified employees can lease apartments at significantly below market rates, with the option to purchase after 3 years at a predetermined price." "And you're suggesting I might qualify for this program?" Maya asked carefully. Alexander nodded. "Based on your performance reviews and Victoria's assessment following the Phoenix presentation, you more than qualify. There's a 2-bedroom unit available immediately. The building has its own daycare facility, a gym, and security. It would be a significant improvement over your current temporary housing. Maya studied him, trying to determine if this was special, treatment disguised as a corporate benefit, or a legitimate opportunity being offered on merit. How many other employees are part of this program? Currently 12, Alexander replied without hesitation, including our head of cybersecurity, 2 senior software architects, and our lead counsel. He named several others, all positions. That suggested the program was indeed aimed at retaining valuable talent, not a cover for personal favoritism. Still, Maya hesitated. The timing feels convenient. Alexander's expression softened slightly. I won't deny that I accelerated the review process to ensure you'd have an option before your current housing expired. But the opportunity is being offered based entirely on your professional qualifications and contributions to Meridian. Before Maya could respond, Lily dropped the toy she had been examining, causing it to clatter to the floor. Alexander retrieved it smoothly, wiping it with a clean napkin before returning it to the baby. Thank you, Maya said, the simple courtesy somehow making her decision clearer. Over the past months, Alexander had consistently supported her professional growth while respecting her independence. This housing offer felt like an extension of that approach, creating opportunities without imposing obligations. I'd like to see the apartment, she said finally, and review the terms of the program before making a decision. Alexander nodded, seemingly pleased with her cautious acceptance. I'll have the details sent to you tomorrow. If you're interested after reviewing everything, we can arrange a viewing this weekend. Their conversation shifted to more general topics as dinner progressed. Alexander asked thoughtful questions about her work with the data team, sharing insights about Meridian's long-term vision that helped Maya understand how her projects fit into the larger corporate strategy. In turn, she found herself asking about his background, curious about the path that had led him to his current position. My father founded Meridian as a small software consulting firm, Alexander explained, his expression reflective. I was expected to join straight out of college, but I rebelled, spent 2 years with an architectural firm in Chicago instead. What brought you back? Maya asked, genuinely interested in this glimpse of a younger, less conventional Alexander. My father's health, he replied simply. He had a heart attack and suddenly the company's future was uncertain. I returned initially to stabilize things, intending to leave once he recovered. A rueful smile crossed his face. That was 12 years ago. Do you regret it? Maya asked, echoing a question he had once asked her about her own career path. Alexander considered this, his gaze drifting to the darkening lake beyond the windows. I regret not finding a better balance sooner. For years, I was Meridian. Every hour, every decision, every success and failure. It took a long time to realize that wasn't sustainable or fulfilling. What changed? Maya prompted when he fell silent. Alexander's eyes returned to her, then moved to Lily, who was contentedly mashing pieces of soft bread between her fingers. Perspective, he said finally, recognizing that legacy isn't just about what you build, but who you become while building it. The statement resonated with Maya's own journey, how motherhood had transformed her priorities and values, how her current challenges were shaping her into someone stronger and more resilient than she had ever imagined possible. I understand. In that, she said softly, before Lily, success meant recognition, advancement, financial stability. Those things still matter, but they're not enough on their own. I want her to see me building something meaningful, not just surviving. Alexander nodded, a flash of something like recognition in his eyes. That's exactly it. The difference between existing and living purposefully. The rest of dinner passed pleasantly, their conversation flowing naturally between professional topics and more personal reflections. Maya found herself relaxing in Alexander's company, appreciating his dry humor and thoughtful insights. The power imbalance between them, CEO and employee, benefactor and recipient, seemed less pronounced in this setting, allowing glimpses of the man behind the corporate persona. By the time they finished their dessert, a chocolate soufflé for Alexander and a berry pavlova for Maya, Lily was growing restless, her patience with restaurant confinement reaching its limits. "We should probably head home," Maya said, gathering Lily's things as the baby began to fuss. "It's past her bedtime." Alexander immediately signaled for the check. "Of course, my driver is waiting outside." As they left the restaurant, the spring evening had cooled, a light breeze carrying the scent of water and flowering trees. Alexander draped his suit jacket around Maya's shoulders without comment when he noticed her slight shiver. The gesture was simple but unexpectedly intimate. Maya felt the weight of the jacket, still warm from his body, and caught a trace of his cologne, the same subtle scent she'd noticed the night he'd cared for Lily. She murmured a thank you, suddenly hyper-aware of his presence beside her as they walked to the waiting car. The drive back to Meridian Tower was quiet, Lily having fallen asleep almost immediately in her car seat. Maya found herself watching Alexander's profile in the dim light, noting the strong line of his jaw, the slight furrow between his brows. As he checked messages on his phone, "You're staring again," he observed without looking up, the same words he'd used after the Phoenix trip. "Force of habit," Maya replied with a small smile. "Data analysts are trained to look for patterns." Alexander set down his phone, turning to face her fully. "And what patterns are you finding?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibilities. Maya knew she was at a crossroads. She could retreat to the safety of professional distance, or acknowledge the undeniable connection that had been building between them since that first night in his office. "Inconsistencies," she said finally, "moments where Alexander Hargrove, CEO, becomes simply Alexander, the man who plays with my daughter and offers his jacket when I'm cold." Something shifted in his expression, a letting go of careful restraint. Perhaps they're not inconsistencies at all, but glimpses of a more complete picture. Before Maya could respond, the car stopped in front of Meridian Tower. Alexander's driver opened the door, breaking the moment of tension. "I'll walk you up," Alexander said, helping with Lily's car seat while Maya gathered their things. Their elevator ride to Maya's floor was silent, the air between them charged with unspoken thoughts. When they reached her door, Maya fumbled slightly with her keys, unexpectedly nervous. "Thank you for dinner," she said, turning to face him once they were inside. "And for the housing opportunity. I'll review everything carefully." Alexander nodded, his eyes moving from her face to the apartment beyond, the temporary space that had been their sanctuary these past months. "This place served its purpose," he said quietly. "But you and Lily deserve something more permanent, somewhere you can truly build a home." The statement seemed to carry multiple meanings, and Maya found herself wondering if he was speaking about more than just housing. Before she could analyze it further, Lily stirred in her car seat, stretching, tiny arms with a sleepy whimper. "I should put her down," Maya said, moving to lift her daughter. Alexander nodded, taking a step back toward the door. "Of course, I'll have those housing details sent first thing tomorrow." As he turned to leave, Maya made a split-second decision. "Alexander," she called softly, causing him to pause. "Why did you really invite me to dinner tonight?" He turned back, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. "Because I wanted to spend time with you," he said simply. "Not as your CEO or as the man who found you during a storm, but as someone who admires your strength, your intelligence, and your dedication to Lily." The honesty of his answer took her breath away. "That's not what I expected you to say." A slight smile touched his lips. "I've found that honesty, while occasionally uncomfortable, is ultimately more productive than careful evasion." "In that case," Maya said, gathering her courage, "I enjoyed spending time with you too, and not just because you're my boss or because you've helped us." Something like relief flickered across Alexander's face. "Then perhaps we could do it again, when you're ready." The qualification, "when you're ready," touched Maya deeply. He was acknowledging the complexity of their situation, giving her space to move forward at her own pace. "I'd like that," she said softly. Alexander nodded, that almost smile widening briefly. "Good night, Maya." After he left, Maya stood in the center of her temporary apartment, processing what had just transpired. The evening had shifted something fundamental in her relationship with Alexander, opening a door to possibilities she had deliberately avoided considering. As she prepared Lily for bed, changing her into soft pajamas and settling her in her crib, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From desperate hiding to professional respect to this new, undefined territory, each step had seemed impossible until it wasn't. The thought reminded her of something her grandmother used to say: "The difference between impossible and possible lies in a person's determination." Maya had been determined to survive when she hid in Alexander's office during that storm. She had been determined to succeed when given the opportunity at Meridian. Now facing the possibility of a connection that transcended professional boundaries, that same determination gave her the courage to consider moving forward rather than retreating to safer ground. As she fell asleep that night, Maya found herself thinking not of the past, the hardships and struggles that had defined so much of her recent life, but of the future, bright, uncertain, and full of possibilities she was finally ready to explore. The apartment in Meridian's talent retention program exceeded Maya's expectations. Spacious and modern, with large windows overlooking the city and practical features like built-in storage and durable surfaces, it felt both luxurious and livable. The second bedroom was perfect for Lily, with enough space for her crib and future furniture as she grew. "The terms are standard for all program participants," explained the human resources representative who showed them the unit that Saturday. "Rent is fixed at 40% below market rate for the first 3 years, with the option to purchase at a predetermined price or renew the lease at that point." Maya walked through the rooms again, trying to imagine their lives in this space. The kitchen where she would prepare Lily's meals, the living room where her daughter would take her first steps, the bedroom where Maya might finally enjoy uninterrupted sleep. "What happens if I leave Meridian before the 3 years are up?" she asked, always mindful of potential complications. "You'd have 90 days to vacate or transition to a market-rate lease," the representative explained. "But the program has a 100% retention rate so far, so that hasn't been an issue." After reviewing all the details and confirming that everything was legitimate, a thorough background check of both the program and comparable benefits at other tech companies had satisfied Maya's caution. She signed the lease the following Monday. The monthly rent, while still substantial, was manageable on her analyst's salary, especially with the reduced childcare costs from using the building's facility. Moving day arrived the following weekend. Maya had accumulated surprisingly few possessions during their months in the temporary apartment, making the physical transition simple. What felt monumental was the psychological shift from temporary refuge to permanent home, from survival to building a future. As she unpacked Lily's things in the nursery, arranging the small collection of toys and books they'd acquired, Maya heard a knock at the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Her colleagues had offered to help move, but she had little enough to transfer that she'd declined. Opening the door revealed Alexander, dressed more casually than she'd ever seen him in. Jeans and a grey Henley, holding what appeared to be a large, flat package wrapped in simple brown paper. "Housewarming," he explained, handing her the package. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," Maya replied, genuinely pleased to see him. They hadn't spoken privately since their dinner the previous week, though she'd received a brief message, congratulating her when HR informed him she had accepted the housing offer. She invited him in, suddenly seeing the apartment through his eyes, the few boxes yet to be unpacked, Lily's toys already scattered across the living room floor. The mismatched dishes she'd purchased from a second-hand store displayed in open kitchen shelving. "It's still a work in progress," she said, feeling unexpectedly self-conscious. "The best homes always are," Alexander replied, his gaze taking in the space with apparent approval. "They evolve as we do." Lily chose that moment to crawl energetically. From the nursery, her face lighting up at the sight of Alexander. She made a beeline for him, pulling herself up on his pant leg with determined little hands. "Hello again, economist," he greeted her, bending to lift her effortlessly. "I see you're exploring your new territory." Lily responded with delighted babbling, patting his face in what had become her standard greeting for him. The ease between them, this powerful man and her tiny daughter, still amazed Maya. "Aren't you going to open your gift?" Alexander prompted, nodding toward the package she still held. Maya carefully unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a framed photograph that took her breath away. It was a stunning black-and-white image of Seattle's skyline during a lightning storm, the Space Needle illuminated by a dramatic bolt that split the dark clouds. The composition was both powerful and beautiful, capturing the precise moment when chaos and order intersected. "It reminded me of the night we met," Alexander said quietly. "How sometimes what appears to be a disaster can become a turning point instead." Maya traced the edge of the frame, deeply moved by both the gift and its significance. "It's beautiful. Thank you." "There's an inscription on the back," Alexander added, bouncing Lily slightly when she began to squirm. Maya turned the frame over to find a small silver plaque engraved with a quote, "The storm is not what defines us, but how we build in its aftermath." "Did you write that?" she asked, looking up to find him watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "My mother did, actually," he replied. "After a literal storm destroyed our family's first home when I was a child. I've carried those words with me through many different kinds of storms since." The personal nature of the gift, sharing not just an object, but a piece of his family history, touched Maya deeply. It represented a level of connection beyond professional courtesy or even friendship. "I'll hang it here," she decided, moving to the wall opposite the main window, where the morning light would illuminate it. "So, we see it every day." The "we" slipped out naturally, and Alexander's expression softened at the inclusion. As Maya hung the photograph, positioning it carefully at eye level, she felt a sense of rightness, as if this moment, this place, was exactly where they were meant to be. The rest of Alexander's visit passed in comfortable conversation. He helped Maya assemble a bookshelf she'd purchased, displaying surprising proficiency with the minimalist instructions and basic tools. They ordered takeout from a local Thai restaurant and ate at the small dining table, Lily contentedly playing on a blanket nearby. It felt strangely domestic, this shared meal in her new home, Alexander's jacket draped over one of her kitchen chairs, his presence filling the space in a way that felt natural rather than intrusive. As evening approached and Lily began showing signs of tiredness, Alexander prepared to leave. At the door, he paused, his expression becoming more serious. "Maya, there's something I should tell you," he began. "Victoria has recommended you for a promotion to senior analyst. It would mean a significant raise and more project leadership opportunities." Maya blinked in surprise. "That's..." unexpected. I've only been with Meridian for a few months. Victoria doesn't care about tenure, only results, Alexander replied. And yours have been exceptional. He hesitated, then added, I wanted you to know before the official offer comes through that I recused myself from the decision process entirely. This is based solely on your work and Victoria's assessment. The clarification meant more to Maya than the promotion itself. He understood her need for professional achievement based on merit, not connection. Thank you for telling me, she said sincerely, and for respecting my independence enough to step back. Alexander nodded, relief evident in his expression. That's important to me, that you know I value your capabilities and integrity above any personal considerations. The slight hesitation before considerations hinted at the undercurrent that had been flowing between them since their dinner, the possibility neither had directly addressed. Personal considerations, like the fact that you want to kiss me right now, Maya asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Alexander's eyes widened slightly, then crinkled at the corners with a suppressed smile. Among other considerations, yes. Maya took a step closer to him, close enough to catch the familiar scent of his cologne, to see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes. I've been analyzing the data, she said softly, and I've concluded that I'd like you to. For a moment, Alexander remained perfectly still, studying her face as if memorizing every detail. Then, with deliberate slowness, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, almost tentative, but deepened as Maya responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. It was both exactly what she had imagined and completely different, familiar yet new, as if they had done this 1,000 times and never before. When they separated, Alexander rested his forehead against hers for a brief moment. I've wanted to do that since you stood up to me in your apartment that first morning, defending your integrity when you had every reason to simply agree with whatever I said. Maya smiled, remembering her defiance in the face of his implied charity. I was terrified but too stubborn to show it. You were magnificent, he corrected, brushing a strand of hair from her face with a tender gesture. You still are. It stepped back slightly, his expression growing more serious. I should go. Lily needs her routine, and we both have a lot to consider. Maya nodded, appreciating his restraint, even as part of her wished he would stay. This complicates things, she acknowledged. Life's most valuable experiences usually do, Alexander replied with a slight smile. But I've never been afraid of complexity. After he left, Maya completed Lily's bedtime routine with a strange mixture of emotions swirling through her. Excitement, uncertainty, hope, and an underlying peace that surprised her most of all. Whatever developed between her and Alexander would undoubtedly face challenges, both personal and professional. But standing in her new home, with her daughter sleeping peacefully and her career flourishing, Maya felt equal to those challenges. The storm that had driven her to hide in Alexander's office had been a desperate last resort, a moment when all other options had disappeared. But what had grown from that chaotic night wasn't just survival, it was the foundation for a life, richer and more fulfilling than she had dared to imagine possible. As Maya stood before the framed photograph Alexander had given her, tracing the lightning bolt with her fingertip, she reflected on the truth of the inscription. The storm was not what defined her. What mattered was how she had built in its aftermath with courage, determination, and ultimately an openness to possibilities that once would have seemed impossible. Outside her window, Seattle's lights glimmered against the night sky, no longer threatening, but full of promise. Whatever storms might come, Maya knew now that she had the strength to weather them, not alone, but surrounded by the connections and opportunities she had found when she least expected them. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.